1990. West and East Germany reunify and become plain old Germany again. The first McDonald's opens in Moscow, and world leaders meet in Paris to formally call an end to the Cold War. Nelson Mandela is released from prison in South Africa, Margaret Thatcher resigns from Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and the World Health Organization removes homosexuality from its list of diseases. Iraq invades Kuwait, and American forces are moved to Saudi Arabia in preparation for military conflict. The Hubble telescope is sent into orbit, the Human Genome Project begins, and the first consumer digital cameras enter the market, as does the first version of Adobe Photoshop. Voyager 1 sends back the pale blue dot photograph, and people get dino fever with the discovery of Sioux in South Dakota, the best preserved Tyrannosaurus rex specimen ever found. In movie theaters, Home Alone, Ghost, Kindergarten Cop, and the way too good live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, one of the final projects for Jim Henson, who passed away unexpectedly that year. On the radio, Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You, Madonna's Vogue, Billy Idol's Cradle of Love, and Wilson Phillips' Hold On. In bookstores, Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett's Good Omens, and the go-to gift for high school graduates, Oh, the Places You'll Go, the final Dr. Seuss book published in his lifetime. Super Mario Bros. 3 finally reaches the United States, as does Dr. Mario, though if you're a Sega Genesis kid, you're probably playing Phantasy Star 2. And we see the births of Kristen Stewart, Margot Robbie, and The Weeknd. On television, the series finale of Newhart reveals it was all a dream. The Simpsons have their first Treehouse of Horror, and The Undertaker makes his debut in the WWF, as well as the premieres of Beverly Hills 90210, In Living Color, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Twin Peaks. And oh boy, was it a good year for children's television. In response to a healthy youth market and the now undeniable success of Nickelodeon, network television began expanding their children's content with dedicated programming blocks. On September 8th, we were given the Fox Children's Network, or as it would soon be called, Fox Kids, premiering with fresh animated fare like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Tom and Jerry Kids, Peter Pan and the Pirates, and Bobby's World, introducing a new generation to Howie Mandel. 2 days later, on September 10th, Disney premiered its Disney Afternoon syndication block, bringing together reruns of DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and Adventures of the Gummy Bears with new programming like Tailspin, bringing to fruition Michael Eisner's desire to bring Disney back to television. Many have argued that Disney Afternoon did more to save the company from its 70s and 80s slump than even the animated film renaissance. And even outside the programming blocks, tons of new shows for your Saturday mornings, though most of them were short-lived. Barnyard Commandos, The Wizard of Oz, Gravedale High, The New Adventures of He-Man, Kid and Play, and Little Rosie all received one-and-done seasons. Much more successful was the first of many collaborations between Warner Bros. Animation and Steven Spielberg, Tiny Toon Adventures, bringing the Looney Tunes franchise into the 90s. And then there was Ted Turner and Captain Planet and the Planeteers, a show about protecting the environment that is arguably clumsy and oversimplified, but also the most blatantly political children's cartoon ever. With messages about protecting the environment and having empathy for people different than you, including an episode attempting to dispel myths about the AIDS epidemic, you can imagine the demographic that took umbrage with this show. And speaking of political cartoons, on April 21st, we got Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, a half-hour anti-drug special that was simultaneously cast on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, PBS, the USA Network, BET, the Disney Channel, Telemundo, Univision, and yes, Nickelodeon. You could not escape it if you tried. Sponsored by McDonald's, introed by President George H.W. Bush and First Lady Barbara Bush, and starring characters from several children's franchises teaming up to help a young boy deal with his drug problem. It is a gloriously stupid piece of late 20th century corporate cheese. As for Viacom, 1990 was about positioning itself as a major player in entertainment production, starting with a new logo. The chunky V thing was out, and sharp angle fonts were in. This wouldn't be noteworthy by itself, except the company took full-page ads out in the newspaper to announce the new logo. Look at us, we're a serious company. The big move for Viacom, and Nickelodeon of course, was the expansion of television production in Florida, becoming the third largest entertainment producer in the state after the Walt Disney Company and MCA Incorporated. Outside of their cable projects, Viacom was using studio space at Universal Studios to produce action-adventure shows like The Adventures of Superboy and Superforce. But using studio space is one thing. Having your own studio space is another thing. On June 7th, 1990, Nickelodeon Studios finally opened its doors to the general public. One part production space, one part theme park attraction, Nickelodeon Studios was the next big step in Nickelodeon's pop culture dominance, and yes, it will be getting its own video. As for the channel itself, Nickelodeon introduced 9 shows this year, 3 originals, 1 package show, and 5 imports. Plus a pilot for a show we normally associate as a 1991 release. However, while there's a lot of content there, very little of it had a lasting impact. While it may have been the 90s, what we think of as 90s Nick was still a year away. Actually, Nickelodeon in 1990 might be better defined by the shows that ended. We saw the final broadcasts of Star Trek the Animated Series on March 4th, Dr. Snuggles on March 31st, The Mysterious Cities of Gold on June 30th, Finders Keepers on August 25th, and Total Panic on September 30th. All of that, as well as the end of Nickelodeon's first 2 pillar shows, Pinwheel, and you can't do that on television. Pinwheel, the show that started it all. Without it, Nickelodeon would never have come into existence in the first place. Yes, the show hadn't made a new episode since 1984, and the reruns were really running out of gas. Yes, the low production values were being overshadowed by various imports and, eventually, new Nickelodeon productions